Why was everyone ignoring her at the briefing table? It wasn't that Captain Nora Hayes wanted attention. She just wanted to be seen. But in the world she lived in, the world of soldiers, operators, and silent hierarchies, attention wasn't earned by speaking. It was earned by scars, by kill counts, by the kind of stories people told when you weren't in the room. And Nora, she didn't have stories anymore. Arizona Defense Testing Range. Midday. The sun beat down like a hammer on concrete and steel. Heat shimmered off the sand like a mirage, distorting everything, even pride. 13 professional snipers stood in a line, men, all of them. Decorated, confident, loud in their silence. One by one, they took position behind precision rifles gleaming under the desert light. One by one they missed. 13 shots, 13 misses. Each bullet traveled 2.5 miles through shifting wind, through air that rippled like fire, and each one fell short. A low murmur spread through the crowd, soldiers, technicians, observers, all watching the impossible challenge unfold. General Marcus Harris removed his sunglasses. His jaw tightened, but his voice stayed calm. "Any snipers left?" he asked. Silence. Just the desert wind answering him. Then from the back a voice. Female, calm, steady. "May I try, sir?" Every head turned. She stepped out from the logistics tent, a plain uniform, sleeves rolled, no badges, no swagger, just quiet confidence, the kind that didn't need to announce itself. You could see the doubt ripple through the crowd before anyone said a word. A woman from logistics. Someone actually laughed. Another muttered, "Is this a joke?" But Nora just walked forward, slow, composed, the way people walk when they've already made peace with being underestimated. And in that moment, even the general hesitated. Something about her face tugged at his memory. Where had he seen her before? But before we reach that shot, that single moment that silenced a desert, we need to step back. Back 2 days. Back to dawn, when Nora Hayes woke up in her small, quiet barracks at the edge of the Arizona base. She didn't use alarms. She didn't need them. Her body had been trained, years of operations had wired her to rise before the sun. The room was clean but bare. No decorations, no photos, just order. She rolled out of bed and began her morning ritual, 50 push-ups on the cold floor, the kind that hurt joints more than muscles. Then sit-ups, then stretches that pulled at scars she didn't talk about. From under her bunk she pulled out an old rifle case. The hinges squeaked softly. Inside lay an M2010 sniper rifle, decommissioned, technically no longer hers. Didn't matter. Every morning she field-stripped it, cleaned it, and reassembled it. 4 minutes flat, no shortcuts, no hesitation. It wasn't a weapon anymore, it was meditation. She brewed coffee, black, bitter, pure heat and caffeine, and drank it standing by the window. Outside, dawn broke like fire over the mountains, painting everything in gold. By 600, she was already walking across the training grounds toward the logistics office, her assigned duty post for the last 2 years. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't combat, but it was necessary. Managing ammunition supplies, transport manifests, maintenance logs. While others fired rounds, she made sure they had them. A group of soldiers jogged past, young and loud. One called out, "Hey, coffee lady, got any donuts today?" Another snorted, "Logistics queen." She didn't react, just kept walking, boots crunching on gravel. But her eyes moved, tracking details. The slight limp in one soldier's leg. The way another favored his shoulder. The angle of the wind by how the flag snapped. The distance to the firing, range by the echo of gunfire. She noticed everything. The ones who underestimate you never realize how much you're learning while they laugh. At the ammunition depot, A new recruit dropped a crate. Rounds scattered across the concrete, mixed calibers, weights, chaos. "Shit," he muttered, scrambling to pick them up. Nora crouched beside him, silent. In less than 30 seconds, she sorted every round by weight, caliber, and manufacturer, and placed each one exactly where it belonged. The recruit froze, staring. "How did you?" "Physics," she said simply, standing. Staff Sergeant Chen watched from the doorway, frowning slightly. That wasn't random. That was training, deep training. He made a mental note. Later that morning, Nora sat in a briefing room with 15 officers. Major Reeves stood at the front, clicking through slides. "The 4,000-meter challenge," he announced. "Experimental long-range protocol. We're selecting candidates for advanced sniper testing." The names appeared on the screen: elite shooters, combat veterans, tournament champions. Nora's name wasn't there. Reeves looked at her. "Captain Hayes, this is for combat personnel only. Logistics officers won't be included." She nodded once, didn't argue, didn't even frown. But her hands, resting on the table, curled slightly, just for a second. When the meeting ended, she walked out alone. The sun outside was blinding, the kind that burns white spots into your vision. She passed the firing range. The selected snipers were already practicing, rifles gleaming in the light. She didn't stop to watch. Back in her barracks, she opened her locker. Beneath folded clothes, she found a small wooden box. Inside, a faded photograph. 5 soldiers, desert camouflage, grinning under a sky that looked impossibly blue. A younger Nora in the middle, smiling, something she hadn't done in years. Below it, a single silver bullet casing, engraved with coordinates. And a date: Afghanistan, 2016. She stared at it for a long time, her fingers tracing the engraving. Then she closed the box and slid it back into the dark. Some ghosts were better left asleep. 2 days later, the challenge began. The entire base gathered at the long-range testing field, a massive stretch of desert ending in a steel target barely visible on the horizon. General Harris stood before them, his voice echoing through the dry air. "This isn't about ego," he said. "This is about pushing human capability." Behind him, a display screen showed the target, 4,000 meters, 2.5 miles. He gestured toward the range. "One shot. Whoever makes it earns their place in the Ghost training program." The crowd murmured. That word "ghost" carried weight, whispered stories, operators who didn't exist, missions that never made the news. 13 elite snipers stepped forward. Men who'd hit targets at impossible distances. Tournament champions, special forces, quiet killers with reputations that filled barracks legends. The first shooter took his position, calm, technical, methodical. He adjusted for wind, humidity, spin, drift, fired. Missed 2 meters left. The second shooter, faster, more confident, missed 3 meters right. Third, fourth, fifth. Each tried a different style, none hit the mark. By the 10th miss, the murmurs turned into disbelief. The 11th missed high. The 12th, wind correction failed. The 13th, Captain Rodriguez, the base's best shot, lowered his rifle, shaking his head. Maybe it was impossible, maybe no one could do it. General Harris crossed his arms, scanning the crowd. Anyone else? Silence. The best had failed. Who would dare step forward now? Then from the back, that same calm voice. "May I try, sir?" Heads turned. Confusion swept through the formation. Nora Hayes walked forward, not in tactical gear, just a utility uniform and steady steps. Lieutenant Morgan actually laughed. "You serious right now?" Captain Rodriguez smirked. "She doesn't even have combat qualification." Someone whispered, "Maybe she'll hit the sky." The laughter spread, nervous, mocking. Nora didn't hear it, or maybe she did but refused to let it touch her. She just kept walking. General Harris studied her closely. That flicker of recognition again. "Captain Hayes," he said slowly, "you understand this is 4,000 meters, variable wind, thermal distortion beyond 500. "Yes, sir," she said. "I understand." The desert went quiet. Harris watched her for a long moment, then nodded. "One shot, make it count." She stepped up to the firing line. The rifle waiting there, a Che-Tak intervention. New, unfamiliar. She lifted it, felt its weight, its balance. Checked the trigger pull, the scope's clarity. From her pocket, she pulled a small leather notebook, pages filled with handwritten formulas and ballistics tables. Her own math, her own language. Around her, soldiers whispered again. But curiosity had replaced mockery. She opened the notebook to a page marked by a single fingerprint. The wind rippled the flags, heat shimmered across the range. Nora's eyes moved, calculating invisible currents. Then she retrieved a bullet from her pocket, a single round, custom-weighted, polished to perfection. She loaded it into the rifle. Every movement deliberate, every sound measured. Then she went still. Her breathing slowed, heart rate dropping, 59 beats per minute. The desert seemed to hold its breath with her. She adjusted her scope, 0.3 milliradians right. Her finger brushed the trigger. Silence. Not absence of sound, but the weight of anticipation. The world narrowed to a single point, 4,000 meters away. She exhaled. In, hold, out, hold. Her heart beat. Once. Twice. On the third beat, between breaths. She fired. The rifle cracked like thunder. The bullet spun through the burning air, 200,000 rotations per minute, carving through wind and gravity. 4 seconds of silence stretched into eternity. Then ting. Metal on metal. Impact, the spotter whispered. Then louder impact, dead center. The crowd erupted. Nora didn't move. She set the rifle down gently, engaged the safety. Removed her ear protection. Her hands were steady, her face unreadable. General Harris stepped forward, staring at the screen, the target, a perfect hole through the center. How he began. Nora met his eyes. "Physics, sir." And in that moment he remembered Kandahar 2016. A team pinned down, saved by a sniper they never saw, a ghost unit operator, call sign Viper 1. It was her. The woman who never missed. The woman nobody saw. Until now. Why didn't she smile when she made history? Everyone else was cheering. Every soldier on that range, from the youngest recruit to the most seasoned operator, was shouting, clapping, whistling. Some even laughed in disbelief. But Nora Hayes just stood there, calm, steady, still. The rifle lay beside her empty, its barrel steaming faintly in the heat. General Marcus Harris stared at the target screen, then at her, then back at the screen again. He'd seen long shots before, good ones, incredible ones. But this wasn't skill, this was art. He stepped closer. How? Nora looked at him, not proud, not shy, just honest. "Physics, sir. Wind right to left, 14.3 miles per hour average with gusts. Temperature at 96 caused a mirage at 600 meters. I compensated left 1.8, down 0.4. Standard ballistics." Lieutenant Morgan whispered under his breath, "Standard." Rodriguez's jaw clenched. He'd missed by 3 meters. She'd hit the center. General Harris frowned, processing her words. "You said you understand wind, temperature, and pressure, but that correction wasn't guesswork. That was intuition." Nora met his gaze. "Not intuition, sir, memory." And just like that, he remembered. Afghanistan, Kandahar province. He was pinned down with his team, gunfire hammering the compound walls, enemies closing in. They'd been minutes away from being overrun. Then out of nowhere, the shooters started dropping. Precise, silent, one after another. When it was over, Command told him they'd been rescued by an unregistered Overwatch unit. Codename Viper 1. A ghost operator. He'd never known her face. Until now. He took a slow breath. You were there. Nora nodded once. Yes, sir, Overwatch, Operation Silent Guardian. The words hit him harder than gunfire. His throat tightened. You saved my entire team. I did my job, she said simply. The crowd had gone silent again, but not in mockery this time. In awe. Harris did something rare. He smiled, genuine, warm. Then he straightened, shoulders back. He saluted her. Welcome back, Viper 1. Nora returned the salute, crisp and exact. For the first time that day, something flickered across her face, not pride, not triumph, but peace. Around them, the crowd began to applaud. One person first, then another. Then the entire formation, clapping, whistling, cheering, not for spectacle but respect. The sound rolled across the desert like thunder. If anyone looked closely, they might have seen Nora blink too many times, the desert wind maybe, or something else. Because after years of being invisible, someone finally saw her. 3 days later, the base felt different. When Nora walked across the compound now, soldiers nodded. Some even saluted. The same young men who'd mocked her before, coffee lady, logistics queen, now stepped aside when she passed. Respect is quiet. And that's why it lasts. At the ammunition depot, Lieutenant Morgan approached her, looking awkward, hands behind his back. Captain Hayes, he said. She looked up from her tablet. Lieutenant, I owe you an apology. For what? For doubting you, for laughing. He shifted his weight. That was unprofessional. Nora studied him for a second. Accepted, she said simply. You didn't know. He hesitated. Still, it was wrong. She gave a small nod, then returned to her work. But he lingered. Can I ask something? Go ahead. How did you learn that? To shoot like that? I've been training for 10 years and I've never seen anyone calculate like you did. Nora put the tablet down. You've been training for 10 years, she said softly. I've been calculating for 15. He frowned slightly. Every shot, she continued, is just a math problem. Wind speed, air density, bullet drop, Earth's rotation. You solve the equation, you trust the result. She paused, glancing toward the open range outside. But the instinct, that's not instinct, it's repetition. 10,000 hours of reading wind, another 10,000 watching how bullets behave, until the math becomes muscle. Morgan nodded slowly, absorbing it. There's no secret, Nora said finally. Just work. People want results without process. She picked up her tablet again, scanning inventory numbers like the conversation never happened. He watched her for a long second, realizing he'd just been handed a truth most people spend careers trying to find. Then he walked away. That afternoon, a summons came. General Harris's office, 1700 hours. Nora knocked once and entered. The office was plain. American flag in the corner. Framed photographs on the wall, dusty memories of operations, medals, and men who didn't make it back. Harris stood behind his desk. When he saw her, he gestured to a chair. At ease, Captain, sit. Nora sat, posture straight, hands folded in her lap. He opened a drawer and placed a small wooden box on the desk between them. I did some checking, he said. Ghost Unit 2014 to 2017. 47 confirmed kills at ranges exceeding 1,500 meters. 17 missions. 0 casualties. You were the unit's primary sniper. Nora didn't respond. Then, after Kabul, You requested a transfer to logistics. He looked up. Why? She took a breath. The answer was simple. I was tired, sir. Of what? Of shooting people. The honesty hung in the air like dust after a detonation. Harris exhaled slowly, nodding. I understand. He opened the box. Inside was a small medal, unadorned, simple, without ceremony. This isn't official, he said. There won't be a parade. Ghost operators don't get those, but you earned it anyway. He pinned it to her uniform himself. No speech, no photographers, just silence. For service above and beyond, for saving lives in silence. Nora looked down at the medal, feeling its weight, its meaning, its quiet burden. Thank you, sir. Harris sat back. There's something else. He slid a folder across the desk. We're rebuilding the Ghost unit. New mission profiles, new recruits. We need someone to train them, someone who understands that precision isn't about ego, it's about discipline. Nora opened the folder. Inside were dossiers, young faces, confident smiles. You want me to teach, she said. I want you to lead, train them, shape them, make them understand what you do. She studied the photos. Too young, too sure of themselves. Unaware of what real combat costs. When do I start? She asked. Tomorrow. Nora stood, closing the folder carefully. She saluted. As she reached the door, Harris called out softly. Captain Hayes. She turned. For what it's worth, I'm sorry it took me this long to see you. Nora's expression softened, just slightly. You see me now, sir, she said. That's what matters. Then she left. The next morning, before dawn, she stood at the memorial wall. Cold air, black granite, names carved in stone. Sergeant Michael Torres. Specialist Amy Chen. Corporal David Park. Lieutenant James Walsh. Her team. Her ghosts. The ones who didn't come home from Kabul. She traced each name with her fingertips, the way a mother traces a child's photograph. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. Her voice broke. The desert wind carried it away. Behind her, footsteps approached, slow, respectful. General Harris stopped beside her. I read the report, he said quietly. You held position 43 minutes, alone, outnumbered. You killed 12 hostiles and held until extraction. 4 of them still died. Math doesn't make it hurt less, she murmured. No, he agreed, it doesn't. They stood there in silence, 2 soldiers who understood that victory and trauma often wear the same face. Why'd you come back, Nora? He asked finally. To this life, you could have stayed in logistics, safe, quiet. She looked at the wall again. Because they didn't get a choice, and they'd want me to keep going. Her eyes glistened in the morning light, to make sure fewer names go on this wall. Harris nodded, his jaw tight. That's why I asked you to lead. I know. They stood there for another moment, the flag snapping in the distance, the desert just beginning to glow. An hour later, the ceremony began. No media, no civilians. Just soldiers who understood what silence can mean. General Harris spoke first, standing at the podium. We don't often acknowledge the work done in shadows, he began. We don't always honor victories won in silence. But today, we recognize Captain Nora Hayes, Viper 1, for exceptional service to this nation. He turned to her. She embodies what we hope to see in every soldier, skill without ego, strength without arrogance, precision without cruelty. He saluted her again. Then Nora stepped forward, facing the crowd. I'm not a hero, she said, voice steady. I'm a soldier who learned to aim carefully. Silence. You could hear the flags fluttering. The real heroes, she continued, are the ones on that wall behind you. They ran toward danger when everyone else ran away. I just made sure fewer of them had to. Her words cut through the air like truth, Quiet, hard, undeniable. "If I can teach you anything," she said, "it's this: precision is a form of compassion. Every bullet you don't waste is a life you might save, yours or someone else." The crowd was utterly still. "We start tomorrow," Nora said finally. "Be ready to work, be ready to fail, be ready to become better than you think you can be." The soldiers nodded, no applause, just understanding. That night, as the desert cooled and the base lights flickered like dying stars, Nora sat alone on her bunk. Her rifle case lay open beside her, the M2010 she wasn't supposed to own. She ran a cloth over the barrel, slow and deliberate. From her pocket, she took out that same bullet casing, the one with the coordinates from Afghanistan. She rolled it between her fingers, then looked up at the ceiling. Somewhere beyond those clouds, a plane would soon take her to a new post, a new generation to train. A second chance. She closed her eyes. The faint sound of wind outside carried her thoughts away, to mountains, to memory, to ghosts that still whispered in her mind. Not all wounds bleed. Not all healing looks like peace. But sometimes, redemption wears the uniform you tried to walk away from. Why did the plane feel colder than combat? Because combat had purpose. This was waiting. The C-130's engines roared as it climbed into the dark. Nora sat in the cargo bay, strapped into a steel seat with her duffel bag at her feet and her rifle case under her boots. Around her, the air vibrated with the hum of power. It wasn't the flight that unsettled her. It was what waited on the other end. A new unit. A new beginning. And ghosts that hadn't yet stopped whispering. She reached into her pocket, fingers brushing the old bullet casing, the one engraved with coordinates and a date she could never forget. Afghanistan, 2016. Her talisman, her curse. Through the small round window, the desert stretched below like a sleeping beast. The last outpost lights flickered, then vanished as the aircraft banked east. For a long while she didn't move. She just breathed, counted each inhale, each exhale, like she used to on Overwatch, controlling the only thing in a firefight she could truly control. When the engine noise evened out, she leaned her head against the cold fuselage and closed her eyes. Hours later, the voice of the flight engineer cut through the cabin. "Captain Hayes, 10 minutes to drop zone." She opened her eyes. The world outside was gray-blue, dawn breaking over a sea of ridges and forests. A hidden valley below, mist rising from the treetops. The plane circled once, then the rear ramp lowered with a mechanical growl. A vehicle waited on the ground, matte black, unmarked. Two figures stood beside it, silhouettes against the fog. Nora descended the ramp, duffel slung over her shoulder. Boots hit gravel. Cold, damp, different from the dry Arizona heat. One of the men stepped forward. "Welcome to Site Echo, ma'am." His voice carried discipline but curiosity too. Major Wyatt, acting liaison. Nora nodded. "Captain Nora Hayes, Ghost," she stopped herself. "Training command." Wyatt caught the hesitation but said nothing. He gestured toward the vehicle. "Your quarters and briefing files are ready. We've assembled your recruits." "How many?" "5. Names." He handed her a tablet. All vetted, top of their classes. 2 Army Rangers, 1 Marine sniper, 1 Air Force pararescueman, 1 intelligence specialist. Smart, skilled, confident. "Overconfident," Nora muttered. Wyatt's lips twitched in what might have been a smile. "You'll fit right in." Site Echo wasn't on any map. A former missile test facility converted into a training compound. Remote, surrounded by mountains and forests. No cell towers, no radio chatter. The kind of place where mistakes could be buried and brilliance could be born. Inside the main hall, 5 recruits stood at attention when she entered. Nora studied them. They looked like every special operations hopeful she'd ever seen. Young, sharp. standing too straight to hide their nerves. The first, Sergeant Troy Maddox, 27, Ranger, confident eyes, hands that couldn't stay still, the kind of man who ran before thinking. The second, Corporal Janelle Rhodes, Marine sniper, steady stare, measured breath, coiled energy, reminded Nora of herself 10 years ago. Third, Lieutenant Eric Donovan, Air Force pararescue, smiled too easily, carried grief behind it. Fourth, Private Leo Singh, intel specialist, small frame, restless brain, the kind who saw too much and said too little. Fifth, Staff Sergeant Kyle Hart, quiet, broad-shouldered, scars on his knuckles, the kind that came from more fights than training drills. Nora walked down the line, boots tapping lightly on the concrete floor. "None of you know why you're here," she said. Maddox answered first. "Ma'am, we were told this is elite sniper qualification for joint special operations." "Wrong," Nora replied. Rhodes spoke next. "Then what is it, ma'am?" Nora stopped in front of her. "This is about making the impossible possible, shooting through wind, time, distance, and fear, and doing it without being seen, heard, or remembered." She turned to the others. "Welcome to Project Phantom, the Ghost Unit reborn." The silence that followed wasn't just surprise. It was recognition. The word carried legend. Maddox's posture shifted slightly. "So, ma'am, we're ghosts now." "Not yet," Nora said. "You're students, and if you fail, you'll wish you'd been ghosts." Training began at dawn. And it broke them. Not with shouting, not with humiliation, but with precision. Nora taught like she fought, quiet, exact, relentless. Day 1. Ranging, wind reading, breath control. They shot at static targets, then moving ones, then mirrors reflecting sunlight into their scopes. When Maddox missed by an inch, he cursed. Nora simply said, "That inch is someone's life, reset." By noon, sweat dripped down faces, rifles overheated, patience shattered. Rhodes held steady longer than the rest, calm, precise. But when the wind changed, her bullet drifted off mark. "Better," Nora said, "but you trusted your scope more than your instincts. Don't." Rhodes frowned. "Isn't that what the data for, ma'am?" Nora looked her dead in the eye. "Data dies when chaos begins. Feel the wind." That night, every recruit sat in silence at the mess hall, exhaustion mooting conversation. Nora ate alone, as always. Wyatt joined her, tray in hand. "They're good," he said. "Not you good, but good." "They're impatient," Nora replied. "They're young. They're careless." He gave a low chuckle. "You were young once." She shook her head. "No, I was scared once, that's different." On the third day, she woke them before dawn. No breakfast, no warning. "Gear up," she ordered. They followed her in silence through the misty woods behind the compound, until they reached a cliff overlooking a deep valley. Wind howled through the ravine, unpredictable, swirling. She pointed to a series of targets bolted to rock faces across the valley. Distances ranged from 500 to 2,000 meters. "You'll fire one round each," she said. "No instruments, no spotters, you'll judge with your eyes, you'll miss. That's the point." Maddox scoffed quietly. "With all due respect, ma'am, that's luck shooting." Nora turned toward him slowly. "You think hitting a target at 2,000 meters with a 12-mile crosswind is luck?" He swallowed. "No, ma'am." "Then prove it." He set up, adjusted, fired. Missed by 5 feet. Nora crouched beside him, watching the vapor trail fade into the mist. "You calculated perfectly," she said softly, "but you didn't feel the valley. The air bends differently here. It climbs. The shot rides the wind like a tide. Learn the tide." By sunset, no one had hit a single target. Nora gathered them in a semicircle. "Precision isn't the same as control," she said. "Control is a lie. The world moves, the air shifts. You don't command the environment, you adapt to it." She looked at each of them. "The bullet is honest. It goes where truth tells it to. Then she walked away, leaving the words to linger. That night she stood outside the barracks, staring at the stars. She hadn't slept more than 2 hours in years. Afghanistan lived behind her eyelids, the screams, the explosions, the crack of her own rifle echoing through dust. But there was something new now, the faint, unfamiliar pull of hope. These 5, they reminded her of something she'd lost, purpose maybe, or faith. Still, every time she blinked, she saw the 4 names carved in granite. Torsjen Park Walsh. She whispered their names into the wind, as if the night would carry them somewhere kind. By the end of the first week, the recruits stopped complaining, stopped joking, started listening. Maddox learned patience. Rhodes learned humility. Donovan, the pararescue lieutenant, rediscovered his focus, the same quiet composure he'd lost after a failed extraction 2 years earlier. They weren't soldiers now. They were students of silence. But not all silence heals. Late one evening, Nora found Singh, the intel specialist, sitting alone in the observation tower, watching the valley. "You're off duty, Private," she said. He didn't turn around. "Can't sleep, ma'am." She joined him, leaning on the railing. Below them, fog drifted between the trees like ghosts. "You're afraid you'll fail," she said. He nodded. "Yes, ma'am." "You will." He looked at her, startled. "Everyone fails," Nora said. "What matters is what you learn before the next shot." He hesitated. "Did you ever fail?" Nora's gaze drifted to the horizon. "Yes." "What happened?" "I didn't calculate fast enough." He didn't ask what that cost her. He didn't have to. After a moment she said quietly, "Fear isn't the enemy, Singh. It's proof you still care." Then she left him to the fog and the whispering wind. Days became weeks. The training grew harsher. Night operations, zero visibility shots, endurance runs through freezing rain. Nora was everywhere, correcting form, demanding precision, pushing them past the point where talent ended and discipline began. Still, some nights, she'd stand in the empty range long after the recruits were asleep, set up her old M2010, aim at the farthest target she could see. Not to test herself. To remember how it felt to aim for something she believed in. One night Wyatt found her there. "You're harder on them than command asked you to be," he said. "They're not training to be soldiers," she replied. "They're training to be ghosts. The line between precision and regret is razor thin. I won't let them learn it the hard way." He studied her face, the stillness, the exhaustion behind her eyes. "You know," he said quietly, "sometimes ghosts come back to life." She gave him a small, tired smile. "Sometimes, but not without cost." By the end of week 4, something changed. The recruits began hitting impossible shots. They worked as a unit, communicating without words, reading wind without instruments. And yet, Nora knew real combat would tear all of that apart. They hadn't seen death up close yet. They hadn't lost someone and blamed themselves for breathing. But that moment would come. It always did. And when it did, she needed them ready. Because ghosts don't get second chances. That night, she wrote a line in her notebook, the same one filled with years of formulas and coordinates. "Precision is the last mercy left to those who have seen too much." She closed the book, set it beside her rifle, and turned off the light. In the darkness, the hum of the wind through the valley almost sounded like voices, faint, familiar, forgiving. Maybe ghosts don't die. Maybe they just keep teaching the living how to aim. What happens when training feels too real? The morning fog had barely lifted when Nora Hayes stood at the edge of the range, arms crossed, eyes narrowed. The valley was silent, deceptively so. Somewhere out there, 5 of her recruits crawled through mud, mist, and silence toward their first full mission simulation. Project Phantom wasn't about targets anymore. It was about control, of fear, of sound, of time itself. A voice crackled softly in her earpiece. Team 1 in position. Visibility low, wind variable. It was Rhodes, the Marine sniper. Calm, collected, always first to report. Nora replied, "Copy that. Maintain radio silence until contact." She glanced toward Major Wyatt, standing beside her under the observation shelter. His arms were folded, but his face betrayed concern. "They don't know what's waiting for them, do they?" he asked. "No," Nora said, "and they shouldn't. War doesn't come with briefings." Wyatt studied her. "You built this simulation to scare them." "I built it to wake them." He didn't argue. He'd seen the mission plan, an elaborate test designed by Nora herself. 5 recruits, 1 valley, a mock hostage retrieval, unknown variables, live fire, and enemy combatants drawn from the base's special tactics teams. The mission's goal was simple: extract the hostage without being detected. But the valley had a way of humbling even the best. 3 hours earlier, before dawn, Nora had gathered them in the briefing hangar. No digital screens, no slides, just a map on the wall, a red marker, and her voice. "This is not a drill," she said. "It's a test. You have 6 hours to retrieve a captured operative. Call sign, Ember. She's held in a compound 2 kilometers north of your insertion point. The enemy has thermal drones, motion sensors, and roaming patrols." Maddox had smirked slightly, the kind of grin he wore before every challenge. "Ma'am, any friendlies in the area?" "None, you're on your own." Donovan raised his hand. "Rules of engagement." "Don't get caught," Nora said simply. "If you're spotted, mission fails." Rhodes frowned. "We're using live rounds." "Yes," Nora said, unflinching. "But every one of you is wearing armor rated for it. Pain is feedback. You'll remember it better than a lecture." That silenced the room. She looked at each of them, Maddox's restless confidence, Rhodes's quiet focus, Donovan's calm readiness, Singh's nervous intelligence, Hart's stoic intensity. "Remember," she said, "you're not just shooters, you're ghosts. Move like mist, think like shadows, leave nothing behind." Then she clicked off the light and walked out. Now, hours later, Nora's gaze stayed fixed on the monitors showing infrared feeds of the valley. Each recruit appeared as a pale blur, moving through the underbrush. Maddox and Rhodes took the left ridge. Donovan and Singh moved low through the ravine. Hart flanked wide, silent as stone. So far, no contact. Wyatt sipped coffee, eyes on the screen. "They're good." "They're learning," Nora said. "They're tired." "They should be." He gave a small grin. "You remind me of an old field instructor I had. Used to say exhaustion is the purest truth." Nora nodded. "It is." Then the monitor flickered. One of the heat signatures froze mid-motion. "Contact," Nora said softly. Rhodes whispered over comms, 2 hostiles moving east. Distance 150 meters, crosswind 5 knots. Maddox's voice followed, low, controlled. "Copy, engaging on mark." "Negative," Nora cut in sharply. "Avoid engagement, stay invisible." A pause. Then, crack. The sound was faint but unmistakable. A shot. The second monitor lit up, enemy patrol down, but so was stealth. Drones turned, sensors lit red. Nora's heart sank. "Maddox." "Target neutralized, ma'am." His voice came through, breathless but proud. "You just announced your position to the entire valley," she said coldly. "Fall back now." Static filled the line. Then copy. Wyatt sighed. "He's good but reckless." "He's good until it matters," Nora muttered. The next 15 minutes unfolded like a controlled disaster. The enemy team responded: fast flanking movements, thermal sweeps. Maddox and Rhodes were pinned near a rock outcropping. Donovan tried to circle around to cover them. "Wind shift," Singh called over comms. "Northwest." Adjust, Nora commanded. They adapted, but not fast enough. A drone's infrared beam swept the ridge. Visual compromised, Rhodes hissed. Fall back to tree line, Nora ordered. The drone's camera feed flickered across Nora's monitor, bright signatures running, ducking, disappearing into shadow. She leaned closer, heart pounding despite knowing it was only simulation. They're boxed in, Wyatt said quietly. If this were real. It's real enough, Nora interrupted. Then a shape appeared on the far right feed, Hart. He was moving fast, too fast, descending the slope behind enemy lines. Sergeant Hart, Nora said into her mic, hold position. No response. Sergeant. Static. Wyatt frowned, his radio's dead. Hart was on his own. Hart's camera feed transmitted faint visuals, tree trunks blurring past, breathing heavy. He crouched behind a fallen log, spotting the compound below. He could see the hostage, a dummy model strapped to a chair in the open courtyard. 2 guards patrolled the perimeter. He waited, counted their steps, their patterns. Then moved. Nora watched in silence, his every motion efficient, deliberate. When the guards turned their backs, he slipped inside the compound shadow line, cutting distance fast. Then a sudden flash on screen. Tripwire laser. The alarm blared through the valley. Simulation compromised, the AI voice announced through the base loudspeakers. Mission failed. In the valley, flares ignited. The recruits froze, blinking in the sudden light. End exercise, Nora's voice came through their earpieces, calm, steady, but colder than the dawn. By the time they reached the extraction zone, the sun had risen high and hot. They lined up in front of her, mud-covered, panting, ashamed. Maddox was the first to speak. Ma'am, I take full. No, Nora said. You take responsibility, not full anything. Every one of you failed differently. Her voice carried across the clearing, low but sharp. Maddox, you broke stealth for ego. Rhodes, you hesitated when it mattered. Singh, you relied on tech, not instinct. Donovan, you followed emotion, not logic. Hart, you rushed the endgame without reading the field. Silence, no one dared speak. Nora took a step closer. Failure isn't shame, but it is data. You either learn from it or die repeating it. Her eyes swept over them. Tomorrow we do it again. Then she turned and walked away. Later in the debriefing room, Wyatt watched her pace back and forth. You pushed them hard, he said. They needed it. You're burning them out. She stopped. Good. Burnout reveals what's real. He sighed. You're harder on yourself than any of them. She didn't answer. Because he was right. That night, Nora sat in her quarters, staring at the small wooden box she'd brought from Arizona. The photo of her old team, Torres, Chen, Park, Walsh, stared back at her through years of dust and distance. She touched the faces one by one. I made the same mistake once, she whispered. I thought speed was victory. Her mind replayed it, Kabul 2016. Her voice over the comms, calm, controlled. Her team below, pinned in a courtyard. She lined up shots faster than instinct, faster than calculation, trying to save them all at once. She'd hit 12 targets in under 3 minutes. Still 4 of them died. Because one calculation had been wrong. Wind shift 2 degrees. That was all it took. A knock broke the memory. Come in. Rhodes stepped inside out of uniform, hair still damp from the post-exercise shower. Permission to speak freely, ma'am. Go ahead. Rhodes hesitated. You're not just training us to shoot, you're training us to think differently. Nora looked up. You notice that now. Yes, ma'am, I mean, Rhodes took a breath. You talk about wind like it's alive, about bullets like they have truth. What did you mean by that? Nora studied her for a moment, then gestured for her to sit. When you fire a shot, Nora said quietly, you're sending intention into motion. Once it leaves the barrel, it stops being yours. It belongs to the world. Wind, gravity, time. All you can do is make peace with where it lands. Rhodes frowned slightly. And what if it lands wrong? Then you learn to live with it, Nora said. She turned back to the box on her table, closing it softly. Some of us are still learning. The next morning, before the sun rose, Nora stood at the valley ridge again. The recruits were asleep. Wyatt wasn't there. The world was still. She watched the fog roll over the trees, ghostly and slow. Then she knelt, pulled her M2010 from its case, and aimed into the mist. No target, no mission, just distance. She adjusted, breathed, and fired. The sound echoed once, then faded into nothing. She exhaled, eyes still on the horizon. You see, she whispered into the wind. Ghosts don't haunt people, they haunt moments. She lowered the rifle. And in the silence that followed, the valley finally felt alive. What happens when a lesson stops feeling like a lesson? The second simulation wasn't supposed to be dangerous. Not truly. Just controlled chaos, a test of discipline, teamwork, and silence. But control, as Nora Hayes always said, is an illusion. The morning came cold and gray. Mist clung to the treetops as Nora briefed the team beside the landing zone. This one's different, she said. No preloaded intel, no designated routes. You'll plan your infiltration yourselves. 5 recruits, Maddox, Rhodes, Donovan, Singh, Hart stood in a half circle, eyes locked on her. The objective, Nora continued, is a satellite uplink bunker deep in the north sector. You'll enter undetected, extract encrypted data, and exfiltrate before sunrise. Rhodes frowned, opposition. Nora's gaze was steady. Simulated, aggressor units running thermal and audio sweeps. You'll be unarmed. Maddox scoffed, unarmed, ma'am. You heard me. Then what happens if we're caught? Then you learn how fast arrogance dies, Nora said calmly. That shut him up. Wyatt stood at the edge of the group, arms crossed. He stopped questioning her methods. He understood now every test had meaning, even when it stung. Nora knelt and drew a rough map in the dirt. Satellite bunker here. Guard rotations every 10 minutes. Drones every 5. 2 access points, 1 roof hatch, 1 service vent. Singh crouched beside her, studying the lines. Vent gives cover from thermal. Narrow clearance, though. Then you go first, Nora said. Singh nodded. She rose, brushing dust from her gloves. Clock starts at 2300 hours. You've got 9 hours to plan. Dismissed. By 2200, the compound lights dimmed to red. Fog pooled thick around the valley floor. Good cover. Inside the barracks, the recruits spread maps and gear across a table. Maddox pointed to the east ridge. We enter here, stay low through the tree line, then cut across to the vent. I'll take point. Rhodes crossed her arms. You took point last time, you got us spotted. Maddox bristled. And you hesitated when you had a clean shot. Donovan cut in. Enough, let's focus. We go low, no comms unless necessary. Hart handles rear watch. Singh handles data extraction. Rhodes nodded reluctantly. They looked like a team, a fragile one but still a team. At 2300 sharp, Nora stood in the observation control room with Major Wyatt. Below them, the recruits moved through mist like silhouettes, 5 shadows gliding between trees. They're better, Wyatt said quietly. They're quieter, Nora replied, but quiet isn't the same as unseen. Her eyes flicked between monitors. She could already tell where things might go wrong, Maddox too confident in open terrain, Rhodes lagging half a pace to correct him, Singh overanalyzing every branch snap. Still, they moved as one. Progress. 30 minutes in, they reached the outer fence. Thermal sweep in 2 minutes, Singh whispered. Then move, Rhodes ordered. They slid through a gap in the fence, bellies scraping metal, breathing shallow. Wind stirred leaves above them, their only cover. Inside the perimeter, the compound loomed, a concrete bunker half buried into the hill, floodlights sweeping in slow arcs. Maddox signaled with 2 fingers forward. They crawled under a service pipe, approached the vent. Singh worked quietly, unscrewing the panel with a pocket tool. Metal squeaked. Faster, Maddox hissed. Singh shot him a glare. You want silent or fast, Sergeant? Both. Rhodes leaned in. Focus, we're burning moonlight. Singh twisted the last bolt free and slid inside, disappearing into darkness. One by one, the others followed. From the control room, Nora watched their progress on thermal cams, faint heat signatures moving through ventilation shafts. Wyatt leaned closer to one of the screens. You're sure the enemy team knows the parameters? They were briefed this morning, Nora said. Then why is one of their drones offline? Nora's eyes flicked to the feed. He was right. One thermal drone had gone dark, replaced by static. Probably just a glitch, Wyatt said. But Nora wasn't so sure. Her gut tightened, that quiet sixth sense earned from years of reading environments, not equipment. She switched to secondary channels, scanning frequencies, static everywhere. Something wasn't right. Inside the bunker, the team reached a maintenance corridor. Dim red lights, dust thick enough to taste. Vent exit clear, Singh whispered, emerging first. Maddox followed, scanning corners with an imaginary rifle. Weird, too quiet. Cut the chatter, Rhodes said. They moved deeper, footsteps soft on concrete, shadows long against the walls. Then a sound. Low, metallic. Donovan froze. You hear that? Hart raised a fist. Stop. Another sound, heavier this time, boots. Contact front, Rhodes mouthed. Except this wasn't part of the simulation. Their training helmets, equipped with HUD overlays, didn't register the approaching heat signatures. No markers, no AI-controlled enemies. Real humans. Real weapons. Ma'am, Singh whispered into his comm, we've got. Static. No response. Maddox glanced at him. What's wrong? Comms are dead. Hart gripped his knife tighter. This isn't scripted. In the control room, Nora slammed her hand on the comms console. All channels down, we've lost feed. Wyatt leaned over the monitor. That's impossible. These are closed circuit. Shut up, Nora snapped. She switched to emergency frequency. Nothing. Her stomach dropped. The drone glitch, the static. Someone had hijacked the exercise. Wyatt, get a ground team moving now. He blinked. You think? I don't think I know. Move. Back inside the bunker, the recruits crouched low in the corridor. The footsteps were closer now, 3, maybe 4 men, armed. Hart whispered, hostiles, real ones. Could be part of the test, Maddox muttered. Rhodes glared at him. You think Hayes would stage a live fire without telling us? Maddox hesitated. Maybe. Then why do I hear safeties clicking off? She hissed. The sound of rifles being readied echoed faintly ahead. Rhodes's pulse spiked. We need to fall back. No, Hart said firmly. We move. We're sitting ducks in this corridor. Maddox looked between them. You two decide fast or I'm making the call. Singh tugged Donovan's sleeve, voice barely above a whisper. Ma'am said precision is compassion. Donovan frowned, meaning. Singh pointed to the vent. We can't outgun them, we outthink them. He pulled a small smoke capsule from his vest, standard for simulation. Non-lethal, but dense. Go, Singh said. Rhodes nodded, tossing the capsule down the corridor. It clattered once, then exploded in a cloud of thick gray smoke. They moved fast and low, slipping through an auxiliary passage as shouts erupted behind them. Bullets hit concrete, sparks flew. Rhodes's hand brushed the wall. Real rounds, real recoil. "Move," she shouted. In the control room, Nora's jaw clenched as static filled every channel. Then faintly, a voice. "Hayes under fire, real rounds." It was Rhodes. Nora's blood went cold. "Wyatt," she barked. "Deploy QRF to grid Delta 3. They're being engaged." "Already on it," Wyatt said, grabbing the radio. "Ground team moving." Nora grabbed her headset and ran. The valley blurred past as she drove the utility vehicle off-road, headlights cutting through fog. The radio crackled with fragments of updates, half-sentences drowned in static. "Contact confirmed. Multiple hostiles. Unknown insignia." She gritted her teeth. This was no drill gone wrong. This was sabotage. Inside the bunker, the recruits barricaded a maintenance door. "Ammo?" Donovan asked. "2 mags between 5 of us," Rhodes said. "Mostly sim rounds." "Great," Maddox muttered. "Guess we'll throw sarcasm at them." "Quiet," Hart said sharply. They listened, muffled footsteps approaching again. Singh looked at the emergency console beside the door. "I can trigger a power overload. Blow the lights, fry their optics." "Do it," Rhodes said. He typed fast, sweat dripping onto the keyboard. 30 seconds. Maddox peered through a crack in the door. "They're coming." Hart raised his weapon, one of the sim rifles modified for blanks. Not lethal, but loud enough to confuse. 10 seconds, Singh hissed. The door handle rattled. Rhodes whispered, "Ready." Then darkness. The power surge hit. Every light in the corridor exploded in sparks. The air filled with the smell of ozone and burning dust. They moved silent, coordinated, perfect. Hart tackled one of the intruders in the dark. Rhodes swept low, disarming another. Maddox grabbed a fallen weapon, fired a burst into the ceiling, disorienting light and sound. By the time the emergency lights flickered back to red, the attackers were down. But one lay still. Rhodes knelt beside him, no armor plate, no sim gear. Blood spreading dark beneath his vest. She froze. "Oh God." Singh stared. "That's real." Maddox's voice broke the silence. "What the hell is going on?" When Nora arrived, the first thing she smelled was cordite and fear. Her flashlight cut through the smoke as she stepped inside the bunker. "Team," she called. "Here," Rhodes answered, voice shaking. Nora found them clustered near the corridor, faces pale, hands trembling. Her eyes moved to the body on the ground, the dead man. His uniform bore no insignia, no ID, just black tactical gear. Wyatt entered behind her, weapon drawn. "Who the hell?" Nora crouched, checking the man's neck for tags. "None." She looked up slowly. "This wasn't part of our exercise." "Then who?" Wyatt began. "Not now," she cut him off. Her recruit stood in stunned silence. Maddox's hand still shook. Singh stared at the floor. Rhodes's knuckles were white. Nora holstered her sidearm. "Listen to me," she said, her voice low, steady. "You did everything right. You adapted. You survived." Maddox shook his head. "We killed someone." Nora met his eyes. "No, they killed themselves when they came for you." But inside, she wasn't sure she believed her own words. Outside, dawn was breaking again, pale light creeping through the trees. Wyatt walked beside her as medics sealed the body bag. "This place is compromised," he said. "I know. You think it's political, intel breach." Nora stared at the horizon, at the ghostly fog now tinted orange by sunrise. "I think," she said softly, "the past isn't done with me yet." Wyatt frowned, meaning. She didn't answer, just watched the body being loaded into the truck. The nameless man, the missing insignia. Ghosts. Just not hers this time. That night, alone in her quarters, Nora wrote a single sentence in her notebook, below all the wind equations and range tables. Even the quietest precision can't stop chaos when it decides to remember you. She closed the book, exhaled, and whispered into the silence. Someone out there still remembers Viper One. Who sends ghosts to hunt a ghost? The question stayed with Nora all night. She didn't sleep, didn't even try. When dawn broke over the valley, the compound was already crawling with response teams. Engineers repairing fried circuits, medics checking vitals, security combing the perimeter. The air smelled of oil and cordite. Major Wyatt found her standing outside the command building, arms crossed, hair damp from the mist. "Investigators from Division 7 are inbound," he said. "They want statements." "Good," Nora replied without looking at him. "Bad," Wyatt corrected. "They don't trust us. Word's already spreading that you staged this." She turned, eyes narrowing. "You think I'd risk 5 soldiers for a stunt?" "I think someone wants it to look that way." She studied him, the set jaw, the fatigue around his eyes. Wyatt wasn't lying, he was scared. And so was she, though she'd rather bite glass than admit it. Inside the briefing room, the 5 recruits sat at the long steel table. They looked different now. Not greener, harder, faces pale but eyes sharper. Rhodes was the first to speak when Nora entered. "Ma'am, who were they?" "We don't know yet." "They weren't part of the exercise," Singh said. "No transponders, no training suits, real weapons, live rounds." "Correct," Nora said, "and none of you were supposed to survive that." The words dropped heavy between them. Maddox shifted in his chair. "You're saying we were targets." "I'm saying someone used this facility to send a message." Hart leaned forward. "To who?" Nora's voice lowered. "To me." They exchanged looks. Singh's hand twitched nervously against the table. Rhodes spoke softly. "Because you're Viper One." Nora hesitated, then nodded. "Because I'm Viper One." Division 7 arrived before noon. 2 black SUVs, tinted windows, no insignia. From them stepped a man in a tailored gray suit, mid-40s, composed, the kind of government presence that carried weight without shouting. "Captain Hayes," he said, offering a hand. "Agent Carver, Counterintel Division 7, will need full access to your files, mission records, comm logs, and range footage." Nora shook his hand but didn't smile. "You'll have them." He glanced around the scorched corridor where the firefight had ended. "Convenient accident, Captain. A training gone wrong." "It wasn't an accident," she said. Carver's expression didn't change. "Then what was it?" "An infiltration." He scribbled something in a small notebook. "Your facility isn't listed in any operational registry. How would anyone even know you're here?" "They shouldn't," Wyatt said. "Yet here we are," Carver replied evenly. He looked back at Nora. "You've made enemies, Captain. Some of them wear uniforms." Then he walked away, leaving her standing in silence. That evening, Nora locked herself in the control room. Screens flickered with playback from the night before, infrared feeds, motion traces, corrupted data streams. She slowed the footage frame by frame. One image caught her eye. A split second before the cameras went dark, a figure crossed the thermal grid, tall, broad-shouldered, moving with military precision. But what froze her was the heat signature on his rifle, the pattern of attachment points. Not standard issue. Ghost issue. Her pulse quickened. Only one unit had used that model. Her old unit. She stared at the frozen frame until her throat went dry. Ghost unit had been disbanded in 2017 after the Kabul ambush, the same day 4 of her teammates died. The survivors were reassigned. Some disappeared into black programs. But the weapon in that image, it meant someone hadn't disappeared. Someone was still out there. She plugged in her encrypted drive, opened the classified personnel list from that era. Tours KIA. Chen KIA. Park KIA. Walsh status, MIA. Her stomach turned. Lieutenant James Walsh, her spotter, her closest friend, presumed killed in the Kabul extraction. But the image, the silhouette, the gait. It couldn't be. Except it was. Wyatt entered quietly, holding 2 mugs of coffee. You haven't moved in hours. She didn't turn. I found something. He set 1 mug beside her. Talk to me. She zoomed in on the still frame. That rifle configuration, that's Ghost prototype T-27. Walsh was the only other sniper who used it. Wyatt frowned. You're saying your dead partner just tried to kill you. I'm saying he's not dead. He exhaled. You realize how crazy that sounds. Crazy doesn't mean wrong, Nora said. Wyatt rubbed his temples. Why would he attack you? She looked up at him, eyes hollow. Because in Kabul I was supposed to cover him, and I didn't. Flashback. Dust, heat, chaos. Walsh's voice in her earpiece calm clipped. Contact north, 2 shooters on the roof. She adjusted her scope, fired twice, targets down. Then an explosion, bright, blinding. Static over the radio. Walsh, she shouted, report. No response. Hours later, the after-action report listed him as missing, presumed killed. Nora had believed it, needed to believe it. Until now. The next morning, Division 7 pulled out, or pretended to. Their vehicles vanished down the forest road, leaving dust and suspicion behind. Wyatt joined Nora in the range hangar, watching her clean her rifle. You're thinking of going after him, he said. I'm thinking of preventing another attack. He crossed his arms. That's the same thing. She slid the bolt back into place. If Walsh is alive, he knows this place, our patterns, everything. He'll come again. And if it's not him? She paused, staring at the rifle. Then someone's wearing his ghost. 2 nights later, the recruits returned to training. Nora insisted on it. Routine meant control, or at least the illusion of it. But they weren't the same anymore. Maddox no longer joked. Rhodes's confidence had hardened into quiet vigilance. Singh double-checked every wire, every code. Donovan and Hart stayed close to each other's flank, speaking in shorthand. They'd tasted fear and come out sharper. That morning, Nora gathered them on the range. This isn't about recovery, she said. It's about continuation. We adapt or we dissolve. Maddox asked, Ma'am, what if they come back? She met his eyes. Then we'll be ready. That night she dreamed. She was back in Kabul, dust in her lungs, gunfire echoing. Through her scope, Walsh's face appeared, sunburned, determined, eyes blazing with trust. Then the explosion again. When the smoke cleared, his helmet lay in the dirt, cracked. She reached for it, but her hands passed through. Why didn't you cover me? His voice whispered, disembodied, echoing from everywhere. She woke up drenched in sweat, heart hammering. The room was dark, except for a faint red light blinking on her desk. Incoming message, encrypted channel. Her fingers shook as she opened it. No sender ID. Just coordinates. And a single line of text. You left me in the dust, Viper. She froze. Below the text, a symbol. A coiled serpent. The old Ghost unit insignia. At dawn, she drove out alone. Wyatt tried to stop her. You can't just walk into a trap. I already did once, she said, starting the engine. I won't do it again. He stepped aside. At least take backup. She looked at him, weary but resolute. If he wanted a war, he'd have hit the base again. He wants a conversation. Wyatt hesitated, then handed her a locator beacon. If you don't check in within 4 hours, I'm coming after you. Fair. She drove away before he could change his mind. The coordinates led her 30 miles north, into the abandoned mining town of Claridge. Half the buildings were collapsed, roofs caved in, windows blown out. Perfect place for ghosts. She parked the Jeep and stepped into the silence, rifle slung low, safety off. Wind whistled through broken glass. She moved carefully, scanning shadows, reading the air, the way she used to read a battlefield. Then she saw it on the wall of an old storehouse. A symbol drawn in chalk. The coiled serpent. Inside, faint light flickered. Nora raised her rifle and entered. The interior was empty except for a single chair, a lantern, and a figure standing by the far window. Tall, broad-shouldered. He turned slowly, and even through the scars she knew. Walsh. Alive. Older, harder, eyes darker than she remembered. "Hello, Viper," he said quietly. Nora's throat tightened. "James. You shouldn't have come. You left me a message. I left you a warning." He stepped closer. His right arm moved stiffly, metal brace under the sleeve. The Kabul explosion had left its mark. "They said you died," she said. "They said a lot of things." He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "You think Division 7 sent me? No, they just lost control of the pieces they built." Nora frowned. "Pieces?" "Ghost Unit was never disbanded," Walsh said. "They renamed it, repurposed it, used us for black ops they couldn't acknowledge. When I questioned it, they buried me. And now I bury them." Her grip tightened on the rifle. "By attacking my team." "Your students," he corrected. "Prototypes for the next generation. They'll make the same mistakes we did, Nora, unless someone stops them." "That's not your call." He took another step forward. "It's the only call left." For a long moment, neither moved. Dust drifted in the lantern light like suspended breath. Finally, Nora lowered her rifle. "Come back with me. We can expose them properly." Walsh shook his head. "There's no exposing ghosts. There's only surviving them." He reached into his pocket and tossed something at her feet. "A data drive. Everything you need," he said. "Every op they hid, every name they erased. Get it to someone who still believes in truth." "Why not do it yourself?" He looked away. "Because I won't make it out twice." Then from outside, a faint rumble. Engines. Multiple. Nora's radio crackled to life. Wyatt's voice. "Nora, we've got incoming. Unmarked hellos, Division 7. You need to move." She looked back at Walsh. He smiled faintly. "Guess they found me first." The windows shattered as the first rounds hit. Bullets tore through the walls, splintering wood. Walsh shoved her behind cover. "Go. I'm not leaving you again." "You already did once," he said. "Don't make it twice." She hesitated, then grabbed the drive, sprinted toward the back door as explosions ripped through the front. When she reached the alley, she looked back. Through smoke and debris, she saw him standing in the doorway, rifle blazing. A ghost defending another. Then the structure collapsed. Nora hit the dirt as the shockwave rolled over her. When she looked up, the storehouse was gone, fire licking at the ruins, metal groaning. Walsh was gone too. She pressed the data drive to her chest, shaking. The roar of helicopters faded into distance. Only the wind remained, carrying dust, ash, and memory. Hours later, back at Site Echo, Wyatt met her at the gate. "You're bleeding," he said. "It's not mine." He glanced at the drive in her hand. "What's that?" "Proof," she said softly, "of what they turned us into." He looked past her toward the horizon, and him. She didn't answer, because there was nothing left to say. That night, alone in her quarters, she set the drive on the desk beside her notebook. Outside, the forest hummed with life, owls, crickets, the sound of wind moving through trees. She wrote one line under her last entry. "The dead don't haunt me anymore, the living do." Then she closed the book. And for the first time in years, she let herself cry. How much truth can a soldier bear before it breaks her? The next 3 nights blurred into one. Nora barely left the control room. The door stayed locked, curtains drawn, screens glowing in the dark like silent witnesses. Her hands trembled from caffeine and exhaustion, but her focus never wavered. The data drive Walsh had given her was heavily encrypted, layers of ghost-coded firewalls designed by people who believed secrets were sacred. But Nora had built half those systems once, and she knew how to tear them apart. At 400, the final encryption key cracked. The screen filled with text, images, video files, mission logs, hundreds of operations stamped with black seals and missing signatures. She scrolled through them slowly, each entry like a knife. Coast 2015, unauthorized drone strikes. Tripoli 2016, covert disappearances. Daraa 2017, civilian containment. All under new designations, all erased from record. Each one marked with the same code word, Eidolon. A ghost reborn. Nora's breath caught when she found her own name on one of the manifests. Hayes N. Beside it, status, reactivated non-consensual. Her fingers froze over the keyboard. They hadn't just kept Ghost Unit alive. They had reconstructed it, a shadow of the original, using data from those who'd survived. Walsh had been right. They'd rebuilt the ghosts, line by line. At dawn, Major Wyatt entered quietly, carrying 2 mugs of black coffee. "You've been in here all night." "Don't start," she murmured. "I'm not starting anything," he said gently. "I'm ending the guessing. Tell me what's on that drive." She turned the monitor toward him. The classified seals glowed red under the dim light. He scanned the screen, lips tightening. "Jesus." "Yeah. They used your team's data to build automated kill protocols," he said, reading the fine print. "Behavioral pattern modeling. AI sniping algorithms based on your engagement histories. You, Walsh, Tors, all of you." Nora nodded. "They called it Project Eidolon, an autonomous ghost network. Human intuition, machine obedience." Wyatt exhaled slowly. "You mean they're trying to replace you?" "They already did," she said quietly. Silence hung between them, broken only by the hum of the computer fans. Wyatt rubbed his face. "You could hand this to the press, blow Division 7 wide open. And watch every recruit here disappear into interrogation rooms," Nora said bitterly. "They'll claim we were complicit. That Site Echo was a rogue cell." He looked at her. "Then what do you want to do?" She didn't answer, because she didn't know. Later that day, she stood on the range as her recruits practiced marksmanship under the fatting light. Maddox adjusted his scope, fired clean through the target's center. Rhodes corrected Singh's stance. Heart-timed breathing with each trigger pull. They moved like professionals now, steady, focused, bonded by survival. Wyatt approached quietly. "They're different." "They've seen death," Nora said. "That changes everything." He nodded toward the distant hills. "You going to tell them the truth?" "What truth?" "That their entire training program was built on the ghosts of people who never existed. They deserve to know who's coming after them." She stared at him. "You think they'd stay after hearing that?" Wyatt's voice softened. "You stayed." Nora looked back at the recruits, the 5 of them framed by the pale orange sky. For a moment she felt something like peace, brief, fragile. Then the thought hit her. They weren't training to protect the world. They were training to feed it. The perfect data set. The next generation of algorithmic soldiers. And she was their blueprint. That night, Nora gathered them all in the main hall. No lights, just lanterns. The recruits exchanged uneasy glances. They'd never seen her like this. Quiet still, eyes unreadable. "I owe you truth," she began. They listened in silence. "You were chosen for this program because you think differently, Because you hesitate when you should, because you ask questions when told not to, because you care. That's why I took you in." She paused. The next words felt like betrayal wrapped in honesty. "But the people funding this facility don't care about that. They're not training soldiers. They're training systems. Every move you've made here, every shot, every breath pattern, every decision, it's been recorded, analyzed, and coded into a machine learning program." The silence turned heavy. Rhodes spoke first. "You mean we're data?" Nora nodded. "Replicas of us, of me, my old team. Ghost Unit 2, they call it Project Eidolon." Singh swallowed hard. "You knew." "I found out yesterday." Maddox stood, fists clenched. "Then why are we still here? Why haven't we shut them down?" "Because they'll erase us before we can," Nora said. "We're ghosts too, whether we like it or not." Hart whispered, "So what do we do?" Nora looked around the room at their faces, the reflection of fear and defiance in their eyes. "We make a choice," she said softly. "Stay silent and survive, or speak and risk everything." After the meeting, the recruits stayed behind, whispering among themselves. Wyatt found Nora outside, leaning against the railing, staring at the night sky. "They'll follow you," he said, "no matter what you choose." "That's what scares me," she murmured. He studied her profile, lit by moonlight, the faint scar on her temple, the exhaustion behind her calm. "You've carried this too long," he said. "Let someone else take the shot this time." She almost smiled. "You don't hand off ghosts, Wyatt, you bury them yourself." Hours later, she sat alone at her desk, the decrypted files still open on the screen. One video caught her attention, dated the week before the Claridge attack. She clicked it. The footage showed a sterile room, Division 7's logo faintly visible on the glass wall. Two figures stood inside, Carver and another man in a lab coat. "Eidolon prototype stable," the scientist said. "Simulations indicate high predictive accuracy for sniper engagements. Hayes's behavioral data is still our strongest base." Carver nodded. "And Walsh?" "Non-compliant, attempted data theft. We dispatched a retrieval unit." Carver smiled faintly. "Then consider him retrieved." Nora froze. Walsh hadn't been hunted by coincidence. Division 7 had sent that attack team, not to kill her, but to kill him. He risked everything to bring her the truth. And she'd walked away with it, leaving him in flames. Again. By sunrise, she'd made her decision. She called Wyatt to the office. "I'm taking the recruits off-site." He frowned. "To where?" "Somewhere off-grid. I'll handle the data drop myself." He stepped closer. "Nora, if you leak this, you'll be branded a traitor." "Maybe," she said quietly, "but at least I'll be an honest one." They left before noon, 2 vehicles, no insignia, minimal gear. Nora drove the lead truck, wind cutting through the cracked window. Rhodes sat beside her, silent. The others followed in the second vehicle. After miles of rough terrain, they reached an old comms relay station, abandoned, power still functional. She parked, stepped out, and handed Rhodes a drive. "Duplicate this. Encrypt it under civilian channels. If I don't make it back, you send it." "Make it back?" Rhodes asked. "Division 7 won't let this go quiet. Once they know it's gone, they'll come." Rhodes gripped the drive. "Then we make noise." Inside the relay room, Nora connected the data to a civilian satellite link, hidden under old mining codes. The upload began. Progress bar 8%. Then 12%. Static crackled through the radio. Wyatt's voice. "Nora, they're coming. Multiple vehicles from the South Road." She exhaled slowly. "How long?" 10 minutes. "Then that's all we need." Outside, the recruits took defensive positions along the ridge, Maddox and Hart at the flanks, Donovan and Singh covering the approach. They didn't flinch. Didn't panic. They just moved, disciplined, precise, silent. Nora stepped onto the ridge, wind whipping through her hair, sun bleeding over the hills. She looked down the road, black SUVs kicking up dust. Wyatt's truck skidded into view from the opposite side, cutting off the convoy. He stepped out, rifle raised. "You always did pick bad places for endings," he called. Nora smirked. "Maybe it's time we start writing better ones." The first shots cracked through the air. Singh returned fire, covering Rhodes as she worked the transmitter. 60%, Rhodes shouted. Maddox grunted, taking cover behind a boulder. "They're flanking left." Nora moved between positions, issuing commands calm, precise. Not barking orders, just guiding. She dropped to one knee beside Donovan. "Focus your breath, aim where they'll be, not where they are." Donovan nodded, inhaled, fired, clean hit on a vehicle tire. The SUV spun out, crashing into the ditch. Rhodes yelled over the gunfire, 90%. Wyatt's voice echoed from the ridge, "Make it count." Then a round struck near Nora's shoulder, kicking dust into her face. She fell, breath knocked out. Pain flared sharp but distant. She crawled behind cover, checked her arm, grazed, nothing fatal. Rhodes screamed, "Upload complete." Nora grabbed her radio, "Wipe the drives, burn everything else." They detonated the relay station's secondary charge, data cores bursting in flame. The SUV screeched to a halt as fire ripped through the station. For a moment, the gunfire stopped. Only wind and smoke remained. By nightfall, the team was gone, vanished into the mountains. Division 7's forces arrived to find only ashes, empty shell casings, and a single note carved into the comms terminal's metal frame. "We don't haunt, we remember." Back at a safe house miles away, Nora sat by the window, arm bandaged, radio silent. The recruits rested nearby, exhausted but alive. Wyatt handed her a small portable screen. "You did it. Every outlet's got the leak. Project Eidolon's front page everywhere." She nodded slowly, "Then it's over." He looked at her. "No haze, it started." That night, as the team slept, Nora opened her notebook again. The page from the night before still glowed faintly in the lamplight. She added one final line beneath it. "Sometimes, the only way to protect something pure is to burn the lie around it." Then she closed the book. Outside, dawn bled over the horizon, soft, fragile, almost forgiving. 2 weeks. That's how long the world needed to decide what to do with the truth. Project Eidolon had detonated across every news network, every military leak forum, every dark channel that ever whispered about ghosts and cover-ups. Division 7 denied everything, of course. Then they buried it under national security. But the files were too detailed, too damning, too human. Video logs, field recording, voice clips of Walsh himself. The story spread faster than they could contain it. Still no medals. No public vindication. Just silence. Because when the truth burns bright, it blinds everyone for a while. Nora watched it all from a safe house deep in the Cascades. A cold, quiet cabin with a leaky roof and no name on the door. Her left shoulder still ached from the firefight at the relay station. She hadn't told the recruits how close the bullet had come. Didn't need to, they'd seen the blood. Wyatt came and went, bringing supplies and updates. Rhodes had found a freelance journalist willing to protect their anonymity. Maddox and Hart fortified the perimeter. Singh set up encrypted comms to monitor government chatter. They were soldiers again, but this time not for anyone's flag. On the 14th night, Nora sat outside by the dying campfire, the notebook open on her knee. The sky was low and gray, the stars muted by thin cloud. She'd written and crossed out the same sentence 6 times. Victory feels a lot like exile. Wyatt stepped out holding 2 mugs of coffee, still writing confessions. She smiled faintly, trying to make sense of them. He sat beside her, the fire painting gold across his tired face. You could have run when Walsh died, could have destroyed the drive. Nobody would have known. She stared into the flames, but I would have known. He nodded slowly. You ever think it's not our job to fix what's broken? She looked at him. Then what's left of us if we stop trying? The next morning, they intercepted a broadcast. A military spokesperson, calm and polished, denying all knowledge of Project Eidolon. Division 7 operates under strict oversight, the woman said. These claims are fabricated from stolen data, likely part of a misinformation campaign. Rhodes muted the feed. They're turning it. Maddox punched the wall. We risked our lives for nothing. Nora didn't move. Not nothing. The truth doesn't die just because it's inconvenient. Singh frowned. Then why does it feel like it did? Nora looked at him, the youngest of the team, barely 22, eyes too old already. Because the world needs time to listen, she said quietly, and sometimes it pretends not to. 2 nights later, Wyatt brought news. They've cleared Site Echo, he said. Everything's gone, burned, rebuilt, reclassified, but they didn't find the body. Walsh, Nora said. He nodded. No remains, no trace. For a moment, neither spoke. Then she whispered, he wouldn't let them find him. Wyatt hesitated. You think he's still out there? She didn't answer. Not because she didn't believe, but because belief was the only thing keeping the memory from collapsing. Days passed. The recruits grew restless, craving purpose. Rhodes began mapping new training routines, defensive, small unit tactics, escape maneuvers. Hart joked less, smiled rarely. Maddox built target dummies from logs and scrap metal. Donovan painted over the old Ghost insignia on their gear, leaving it blank. They weren't ghosts anymore. But they weren't civilians either. Something in between. Nora felt it too, that drifting ache of soldiers with no war left to fight. Then, one cold morning, she found an envelope nailed to the cabin door. No postage, no prints, just her name in neat block letters. Inside, a single photograph, taken from a satellite feed. An aerial shot of a desert ridge. And in the corner, half-shadowed, a figure walking alone, rifle slung, gait familiar. Walsh. Alive. On the back of the photo, scrawled in ink. Some ghosts don't fade, they just change direction. Her breath caught. For a long time, she said nothing. Then she folded the photo, slipped it into her notebook, and whispered to no one, "Rest easy, brother." That evening, Nora gathered the team outside the cabin. "Listen," she said, voice steady but soft. "They'll keep denying what we exposed, maybe for years, but truth has a way of leaking through cracks. You've done your part. You don't owe this fight any more of your lives." Rhodes frowned. "What about you?" "I'm not done yet," she said. Singh stepped forward. "You're going after him." Nora's eyes flicked to the horizon, dark pine silhouettes against fading sky. "Someone has to make sure he's not fighting alone." Wyatt shook his head. "You won't come back from that." She smiled faintly. "I didn't come back from Kabul either. I've just been pretending." They didn't argue. They knew better. Instead, they packed quietly, each one leaving something behind. Hart left his old uniform patch on the table. Singh left his comm unit, still humming faintly. Maddox placed a single bullet beside her notebook, polished, engraved with "Thank you." Rhodes hugged her once, no words. Wyatt walked her to the edge of the woods. "Where will you go?" he asked. "Where the silence is honest," she said. He nodded, then reached into his jacket and handed her a worn compass. "You never did like maps." She looked down at it, the glass cracked, the needle trembling slightly. "Still points north." "Most days," he said. "The others it points home." She smiled. "Then that's enough." She left before dawn. No goodbye, no ceremony, just the crunch of boots through frost and the echo of quiet breaths. The team watched from the cabin window until she disappeared into the tree line. None of them tried to follow, because some journeys aren't meant to be shared. Weeks later, reports began surfacing, faint, scattered stories whispered through off-grid channels. A sniper operating in conflict zones no one claimed. Targets, human traffickers, arms smugglers, ex-intelligence assets. No survivors. Locals called her the Ghost Widow. Others called her Viper. But those who saw her and lived said she never spoke. She just appeared, acted, vanished. Precision without noise. Mercy without mercy. Back in the Cascades, the recruits disbanded quietly. Rhodes and Hart joined a humanitarian unit under a new name. Maddox vanished into South America. Rumor said he was training rebels to protect villages. Singh joined a cyber task force, helping expose black operations worldwide. Wyatt retired, bought a house near the coast. He sent postcards sometimes, never signed them. And sometimes, when the wind blew east, he swore he could hear a single shot echo across the surf, distant, clean, perfect. 1 year later, the world moved on. New wars started, old ones blurred into memory. But among those who'd seen her work, a quiet legend remained, the nameless sniper who refused to belong to any flag. Some said she was vengeance. Others said she was penance. No one knew the truth. In a small village outside Ankara, a local teacher found a package on her doorstep one morning. No sender, no markings. Inside, a notebook, weathered edges frayed. The first page read, "This is the story of what happens when silence learns to aim." At the end of the notebook, a final line, neat, deliberate, written in Nora's hand. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. Fade out. Sound of wind. A single heartbeat. Then the click of a rifle bolt, steady, calm, final.